You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, sometimes the international. And oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to the middle of the week. It is indeed Wednesday, and that means we got to hear from the camel. Play it, man.
Uh-oh. Guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Mike. What day is it, Mike? Leslie, guess what today is?
It's hump day.
Woo-hoo! It is indeed. By the way, congratulations. You have made it halfway to the weekend. We're glad of it. And I don't know what's going on with where you're at right now, but we just had a sudden soaker of a downpour that then cleared up, and now the sun's already out. So it's that time of year, man. Don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes, it'll change. But it's the middle of the week, and JP is on the board. Hey, buddy, how you doing?
I'm great. How about you?
I'm
on
good.
This hump day?
I'm doing good enough. How about that?
Better than we deserve.
That's right. Too blessed to whine. All right, we got a great show laid on for you. You know the deal, y'all. It's Wednesday. It's hump day. That means at 4 o'clock, we bring in the Grand Council, Jeff Poore, and today sitting in for Dale Jackson, who is not with us for the moment, is none other than Yaffe, subbing in as a proxy for Dale Jackson. So yeah, Grand Council coming up top of the third hour. Stand by for that one. And then we still got a triple dipper just filled up with stuff. So hit it, man.
The Triple Dipper. 3 stories you've got to know.
That's right, the Triple Dipper, 3 stories, 3 themes, if you will, that you got to know as we run today's show. So first out the gate, ain't no free lunch. None. No free lunch. I don't know if you heard or not, but the Trump administration has said that whole Biden student loan bailout thing, it is done. Not only that, they're calling in the notes. So it's going to get dicey for some people who have been living large on somebody else's money for a while, but not no mo. There ain't no free lunch. And so, yeah, that's number 1 on the Triple Dipper. Number 2, alien enemies. Alien enemies. So the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 is all in the news right now. The courts don't know what to think of it. They cannot imagine how this can happen. The Trump administration's got active law on the books. They're trying to use it. And all said and done, the American people just want to know their borders are secure and that their lives are safer because the Trump administration is doing what they voted them in to do. It's tough. We got an uphill climb, apparently. Alien enemies, number 2 on the Triple Dipper. And then number 3, are we watching DEI's last gasp? It feels like it. DEI's last gasp. What is there to say about it? I mean, I've got stories right now you're going to want to hear, some of which are in Alabama and Tennessee. But I've got stories that are clearly indicating that the world is restoring a sense of normalcy, that like we're suddenly getting back to common sense. We'll talk about it. DEI's last gasp, that's number 3 on the Triple Dipper. All right, let me jump on into the Rightside Way opening monologue. I'll remind you guys that the Rightside Way is brought to you every single day by my friend and attorney, Stan McDonald. Stan McDonald, he's a partner at the law firm of Wilmer and Lee, and he's a 30-year veteran in the practice of law, and he is the daily sponsor of the Rightside Way, and I'll tell you more about Stan here momentarily. In the meantime, let me just jump right on in. So, I don't know if you've heard or not, but student loans, like I said a moment ago, are actually back in the news. There's a new report that came out that indicates that upwards of 5.3 million people in the U.S. have defaulted on student loans. 5.3 million. Another 4 million on top of that are said to be 90 to 120 days late on their student loan payments. That's 9.3 million people. And less than 40% of all student loan borrowers are current on their loan payments overall. And y'all, that's a travesty. That's just horrible. It also clearly indicates that we have a problem. Either those loans never should have been given in the first place, or they took out more than they could afford, or the economy is just so bad they can't find enough work to make their payments. Maybe there's a little bit of each, I don't know. But I think there's a bigger problem. What do you think? I'll give you my thoughts. I believe that what we are watching right now is a crisis of accountability. There's a generation out there of loan recipients who have been patted on the head and told that they were the victims because they took out a loan from mean people and they shouldn't have to pay it back. Somehow receiving money from someone else and signing your name on the dotted line with a promise to repay it means nothing because apparently Uncle Sugar will just run in there and rescue you. Well, the jig is up. Uncle Sugar has turned off the trust fund tap. The Trump administration has just announced that it will begin working to collect on unpaid student loan debts. Trump's Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, said yesterday, quote, "Going forward," she said, "the Department of Education, in conjunction with the Department of Treasury, will shepherd the student loan program responsibly and according to the law, which means helping borrowers return to repayment, both for the sake of their own financial health and for our nation's economic outlook." Yeah. So the federal government has basically been ordered to follow through on the contractual remedies that the borrowers actually agreed to in the beginning. Basically, if you're in default on a student loan, they can call the note. They can garnish wages. They can reclaim tax funds. Overall, the Department of Education said that 42 million borrowers are currently out there who owe the government over $1.6 trillion. And one department official from education said it's pushing the entire student loan portfolio towards a fiscal cliff. I mean, liberals are already freaking out that the Trump administration plans to actually hold people accountable. It's going to be a sure enough wake-up call when the free lunch is over for millions. But let's think about the way we got here. Let's consider for just a minute the legal, ethical, mental, and moral twists and turns that liberals push to get us to the point that an entire 14% of the United States actually owes money to the government for student loans. And how can it be, by the way, that the vast majority of them do it right, while a batch of them are still given a pass for not doing it right? Well, you may recall back in 2022, President Biden went to the podium and attempted to justify his efforts to grow the welfare state. I know you've all heard about it. It was his plan to pay off student loans, right? Estimates put the price tag for Biden's student loan bailout originally at $400 billion. Ostensibly because people who knowingly entered into a contract to receive a benefit shouldn't have to be held accountable to their own contractual obligations. I mean, because, it's hard or something equally insulting. I mean, the bottom line is, y'all, there's no free lunch. These are government bailouts that Biden was talking about, and they are bailouts that are unrelated to war or poverty or natural disaster. They are simply related to the idea of rescuing knuckleheads from their own bad financial decision-making. And they have to be paid by somebody. Like I said, get a free pass on your student loan, but there ain't no free lunch. Somebody's going to pay. The Supreme Court finally stepped in and rejected the Biden student loan bailout, but he kept going, finding key ways to work end arounds, and eventually he claims to have written off over $183 billion in student loans overall. Look, there's a number of things wrong with that idea. First of all, I'm an attorney, so I'll tell you the first thing I think of is from a legal standpoint. Biden did not have the authority to do this. The Supreme Court agreed. The student loan bailout was touted by Biden as necessary under the auspices of emergency spending that was related back to the COVID pandemic. But even when the pandemic was over, it was still going on. Even if the pandemic was not over, though, the veracity of Biden's position that he could just spend federal tax dollars to pay off individual debts, that's just indefensible legally. Secondly, I would have to argue the notion of paying off somebody else's debts who has not even asked you to do it for them is just ethically wrong. Not just legally, but ethically. I mean, how can a president who actually has a fiduciary responsibility to the whole of the American public justify the ethical position that just because times were hard, the government needs to lighten the contractual obligations of some citizens and not others? I mean, can the government be so into the idea of picking winners and losers that it can just ethically look in the eyes of a 24-year-old who thought it'd be a great idea to borrow $50,000 for a degree in underwater basket weaving, and then in a fit of misguided benevolence pay that debt off simply because it came through a university? At the same time, though, turn around and deny any other relief to a 24-year-old who worked a night job to get a certificate as a journeyman plumber and then borrowed $50,000 to buy the equipment to start his own company. You hear what I'm saying? One gets paid off, the other one doesn't. They're both in the same boat, and yet that's the government telling you that one deserves a free lunch, but the other one doesn't. All right, that's legal and ethical. What about mental? Well, we know what Biden's mental state was like, sort of. But literally, what are we to think of a commander-in-chief who would say on one day he's going to use $400 billion of our tax revenues to pay off student loans because, the pandemic and hard times and all that. At the same time, going out there and campaigning for president, emphatically saying that he built an economy that was so great that nobody was having hard times. I mean, it's a mental machination that eludes most people, and the only conclusion was he was lying knowingly, or he was deluded unknowingly, or basically that the same brain was doing both. All those conflicting thought patterns without one of the other two conclusions meshing. He was either lying or deluded. In essence, if he were in court tomorrow, I could easily say that his testimony would be immediately impeachable. All right, so that's legally, ethically, and mentally. How about this? I can also argue against the student loan bailout without too much trouble in those regards, but there's another argument I believe bears equal, maybe even greater weight. Because the question as to whether or not a student loan bailout should be done, that question has to be asked morally. By telling an entire generation that the debts that they incurred are really not their fault, and they shouldn't have to bear such responsibility. Well, the Biden administration has now just perpetrated the growth of a welfare mentality. And having a welfare mentality, the kind of mentality that says, I'm a victim and I need to be rescued, that keeps other people who would otherwise be strong, healthy members of society from learning the value of getting out there and taking a calculated risk. It tells them there's no need to press through adversity. It tells them they've become expectant regardless of their potential for productivity. Would we ever raise our kids to believe there's no hope of success without somebody else stepping in and rescuing us? In essence, Joe Biden told every kid who didn't bother to show up to practice and came late to the game that they're still going to get a participation trophy. That's what it boils down to. So yeah, I can argue against that legally, ethically, mentally, and morally. But I'm glad we don't have to anymore, because apparently the Trump administration is going to step in and fix this. The Trump administration is saying, no, that free lunch is over. You got to pay the tab. And oh, by the way, if you default, we're going to do all the usual things. We're not going to make the taxpayers pick up the bill. We're going to garnish your wages. We're going to get a judgment against you. We're going to take your house if we have to. And you know what? If you have a tax refund coming, you're not going to get it. And I hate it. That sounds pretty, austere. At the same time, what they were talking about doing before was just the government picking the winners and the losers, and all the rest of us were the losers, by the way. A healthy society cannot survive on the notion that nobody should ever be held accountable for their actions. And the millions and millions of productive citizens out there that are making a go of it and contributing to their communities, who take the great risks and who know the great failures, but also know the great achievements, those are the people that are now being called upon to pat those poor souls on the head that have somehow borne the ignominy, the burden, the pain of just being asked to pay their own debts. Well, I'm sorry they made a mistake, and I'm sorry they got a useless degree, but my family should not be forced to pay for it. And believe me, somebody always has to pay for it. There is no such thing as a free lunch. And that's a wrap for the Rightside Way. Well, I'm not sure that was a monologue or a rant, but the bottom line is this. The student loan bailout program was ill-fated. It was nothing but a cheap attempt to try and buy votes, and it's gone. And those who signed up knowingly, guess what? It's time to do a little adulting and pay your bill. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. Just saving the world one soundbite at a time. All right, I got to tell you guys before I go any further, attorney Stan McDonald is indeed the sponsor daily of the Rightside Way monologue. Stan McDonald, he's a partner at the law firm of Wilmer and Lee. He's a 30-year veteran of the practice of law in North Alabama. Listen, I know Stan personally. Not only is he the kind of guy that will advocate and fight for your legal needs and rights, but he's been an absolute warrior in the mix, in the fray, in the trenches on the politics and the policies that right-side ruffians care about. Stan McDonald, he has represented his clients in literally thousands of real estate transactions over the years. He knows how to represent you in any state, local, or federal court. And, oh, by the way, I like to say that if Stan McDonald's on your side, you're going to have no greater friend. Likewise, your adversaries would have no greater foe. I mean that. So here's the deal. You might want to get in touch with him. If you need a lawyer in North Alabama, Stan McDonald, the law firm is Wilmer and Lee. He's an America First family man. And here's his phone number. You ready? 256-479-3020. That's Stan McDonald, 256-479-3020. Tell him you heard about it on Rightside Radio. Okay. No representation made. Oh, I messed it up from the beginning.
Mulligan, go ahead.
No representation made. The quality of legal service we perform is great. The quality of legal service for all lawyers.
That was really good. Bounce back. I gave that like a 9.3 right
Really?
there. That was really good bounce back.
I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Russian judge. I tell you what, do I have time? I'm going to go ahead and grab a quick phone call. He held on during the break, so let me honor his time. Scott from Huntsville. Hey, Scott, how you doing?
Good afternoon, sir. How you doing?
I'm good, man. What's on your mind?
Hey, everything you just finished talking about, you hit the nail right on the head. Now, a lot of people disagree with me on this, but about a third of the way through COVID, my wife and I had sat down and we discussed this over a 3-day period, everything. The college loans, COVID, being locked in your house, businesses being shut down, everything, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
And we decided, my wife and I decided, that this, now COVID may not have been deliberate, but I think the extent of COVID was deliberate.
Okay.
My wife and I looked at each other and we said, 5, 8 years from now, we're going to have to start paying. This is all going to be over with, and the taxpayers are going to have to pay for everything.
I would agree with that. And we got about 30 seconds here, Scott.
And that's what's happened. And a lot of people still disagree with my wife and I, but it's coming to fruition.
No,
have a great day. God bless. And Airborne Infantry, sir.
Hey, thanks, Scott. Appreciate you, Airborne. No, he's right. I mean, that was, and I think we dodged a bullet by another bullet. We dodged a financial bullet by Trump being elected, because I think if Biden got elected, that $184 billion of student loan write-offs that he's made, they would be double that by next year. And the entitlement mentality would have just exacerbated the ever-growing, entitlement mentality or welfare state that we've got in the United States. It's tough. And listen, I know what it means to put your name on the line and go do something risky and take that chance and, put everything you got into it. That's exactly what we did here with Rightside. And I'm not saying it ain't easy. It ain't. What I am saying is this. You can't let the government be your rescue. You can't let the government be your sugar daddy. The bottom line is this. There has to be a measure of accountability. We're going to talk about more of that here momentarily. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. Whew. Goes from Huntsville back over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden. I mean, all the way down to that loveliest little village on the plains we call Auburn, straight across the border to what now we call again Fort Benning. And then big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi thrown in just for good measure. I got a bunch of text messages. Text lines are indeed open, 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. Hey, listen, I got to put a shameless plug in there. We do a lot of stuff here at Rightside Media. That's the parent company for Rightside Radio. You're just listening to one of our gigs, all right? So we have a ton of podcasts. We got a lot of content that we write that gets published in like scads of news outlets around the region. And it's all found on our website, rightsidemedia.org. You can find all our stuff there. And I believe actually my latest podcast came out this morning. It did, 11 o'clock?
10 o'clock. Yep.
10 o'clock.
Yep.
That was 11 o'clock Eastern.
Yes, 11 o'clock Eastern. That's correct.
For our Chattanooga folks.
Yep.
But yeah, so my latest podcast is called The Right Philosophy. It came out today. So yeah, we have multiple video podcasts. Every one of them has a different backdrop, if you will. All of them are conservative content with a different, sort of a backdrop to talk from. We got The Controversial Mom with Emily Jones. We've got Out of Right Field about sports with JP. We got My Right Philosophy. We've got the Liberty Minute with former Navy SEAL Jared Hudson. And then on Fridays, we have Right Click with Birdman, and that's based off of gaming and high tech and that kind of stuff, but it's still conservative content. Anyway, all said and done, something for everybody and all conservative. And you can trust the source. Rightsidemedia.org is where you find it all. To include our merch store, which is going crazy. We've been selling a lot of T-shirts, a lot of coffee mugs. So yeah, check out the merch store while you're at it. Natalie will get that stuff out to you post haste. Text lines. Let's see what we got here. Let's see. Yeah, Bruce from Springville. He says, if you borrow for student loans, stand by for collection and bad credit rating. And then number 2, DEI is going to die like disco. Man, disco was such a fad, Has anybody ever seen a flash-in-the-pan musical genre come up like that and then just go away? Now, every once in a while, I'll be driving down the road, and I'm not going to lie, like Tragedy by the Bee Gees will come on, and I'll be like, woo, I got to roll the windows down and play it loud for a minute. And then about halfway through it, I can't stand that high-pitched voice anymore, and I turn it back off. But listen, disco. And I was a classic rock guy during disco. I mean, when people were like putting on their bell bottoms and going down to the discotheque, I was still grooving to some Led Zeppelin and Journey and Boston and all the goodness.
The actual timeless music, unlike
the stuff
disco.
that survived.
The
That's
stuff
exactly
that
right.
I listen to this day.
That's right. Aerosmith's Toys in the Attic album was
Yeah.
right there on top of the list. All right, enough of that. Let's see what else we got. Jeff from Indiana. Phil, I think one way, this is a long text. He's got some serious voice texting going on. Says, I think one way to keep people from taking foolish classes with student loan money, I think student loans should be granted for commercially viable degrees. I agree. I said this on another show today. He said, but if you want to take underwater basket weaving, if you have the money to do so or want to work for it, knock yourself out. And if the Trump tariffs work like they're supposed to, there'll be many manufacturing jobs here that need skilled workers, i.e. trade schools. I think there needs to be many more trade schools built and funded because a lot of these new jobs will need skilled workers which pay very good money. Oh, Jeff, you just nailed it. So I was on Yaffe's show this morning up in Chattanooga. And Yaff and I were talking about this very thing. And I pointed out, so I do a lot of real estate law as an attorney. If you're going to borrow money to buy a house, the bank is going to first require that you get a title search to make sure there's no judgments or liens or things that are pending against the title. They may want a survey of the property to make sure they know where the boundaries are so they know what they're financing. They're going to want to know that you have the financial wherewithal to back the loan or at least put down, some portion of the collateral or the funding before they take on the collateral. And then they're going to take a security interest against that house until they get paid off. That all happens when you buy a house. That doesn't happen when you get a student loan. I think they ought to do something. Jeff nailed it. I think they ought to do something similar. Like the universities ought to say, our studies indicate that blank degree usually results in a high-income wage earner post-college. And here's the statistics to prove it. And if you want to take that one, you've got to first prove you have the ability to be admitted into that particular school of study. And then you've got the ability to work, and that you are otherwise commercially, viable. You don't have bad credit. And then we'll loan it to you. And if you want an underwater basket weaving degree like Jeff just said, then guess what? We're not going to fund that because there ain't no money in it after college. Just saying. That's not hard. And this is like part of the First Dipper. The First Dipper is on this very topic. So we're on. Did you have a student loan, by the way?
Yeah, I still paying them off right now. I think I'll be done in 2027. So
okay.
Yeah.
So you're making those payments on it each month, huh?
Yep. And it's crazy. So I mean, I dropped out after my freshman year of college. So I guess
no, you made a life decision.
Life decision. There you go. So that's a better way to put it.
You came to work with me.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I was on considerable amount of scholarships. I was on scholarship for my ACT. My dad went to Alabama, so alumni scholarship, like in-state scholarship. So like a good chunk of scholarships. And I guess I didn't really fully realize. I think it was after a conversation with my dad where I kind of realized, I was still taking up some loans, and that was at the time I was already thinking about taking a break from school because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I mean, I was doing business administration because that sounds cool, and I didn't know truly what I wanted to do. So I think around the time I was considering taking a break, and I found out I was taking loans out at the same time. I was like, so I'm going in debt for wondrously aiming in school, not knowing what I want to do. Screw that. I'm not going to do that. So. Yeah. I mean, that was around that time I decided to, take a break. But I mean, a lot of these people are going and, have no idea what they want to do in school, but they're told that's the only way. So they're taking up debt while getting a meaningless degree. And then after college, may not even use that degree. So I think it's a messed up system as a whole.
It really is.
And if you look on the flip side, the people who are giving out these loans are taking advantage of these kids because they don't know. I mean, they're not thinking long term. Like, yeah, I guess I'll take a loan and I'll figure it out later. And then all of a sudden you're paying off your loans till you're like 45, 50. It's like, it's a messed up system as a whole.
But but Jeff makes a point too. There's so many things that you could do that would be like you and I were with some folks last night. One of the guys is actually about to get his journeyman's plumber's certificate. Mm-hmm. That's it. He'll make a good living doing that.
Yeah.
And I could see a loan to get that education. I could. And it also is proven that when you come out with that, you go right into the trades and there's work for you. You can get a welding certificate and be making $70,000 a year down in the boatyards in Mobile right off the bat. But they go and they get these worthless degrees. And you're like, why is the university saying this is a great idea? You know why? Because the university's making money on it.
Yep. And so much of it, I know I have a lot of views on college, and I think it's way overpriced right now, I think, and they're taking advantage of kids that are going into, like you said, getting these meaningless degrees because they don't know what else to do. And I mean, obviously, doctors and lawyers, all those, if you need to take out a loan for that, fair play to you. Those are jobs that I can see that for. But I mean, if you're going in debt just to get like some meaningless degree because you don't know what else to do and you think that's the only way. Yeah. I don't think that's right.
You're getting the college experience.
Yeah, exactly.
You're getting student pricing on the games.
Yeah. I don't know. The whole system needs to be checked for that.
We paid off Charlene's student loans. Now I had a Army scholarship for college, and she had I know that they paid for it out of pocket, but then she had a partial student loan to cover a piece. And it, in our newlywed years when we were tight, and I mean like tight, like we could have gotten government cheese if we'd known tight, but we paid off her student loan, wrote that check every month. Anyway, Joanna from Hartselle checks in and says, brilliant monologue, Phil. I'm one of those people who rarely get mad, but thieves and liars always get my blood boiling, and Joe Biden was an excellent example of both. That's all caps. I was brought up to pay my bills, be thankful for what I have, and to treat others the way I want to be treated. What has happened? So many people feel entitled to what they've done nothing to earn. Now that's a rant. Joanna, it's a well-earned rant, though. And you're also, by the way, right. Ronnie from Danville says, I know you weren't talking about food, but when I was in school, I washed dishes and paid for my lunch. There you go. Listen, and, I'm going to be honest with you. There have been many times, I guess technically there is right now, I'm still practicing law and doing Rightside, but there were many times in the past when we were committed to our lifestyle of Charlene being home with the kids when they were young. That was a commitment we made together as a couple. We believed in it, and it also meant that I was going to do extra work to pay our bills. And I did. I delivered pizza at night. I did janitorial work early in the morning, and I went to work full time during the day, and I had National Guard on the weekend. At one time, I technically had 4 jobs all at one time. And you know what? I don't look back on it with any regrets. So, yeah. Bill from Huntsville says, Phil, monologue or rant, doesn't matter. It was truth. Y'all have a blessed day. Bill, thank you. TL from Huntsville says, what's he say? Oh, you know what? Something blanked out on his text. TL, text again, man. Only like the last few words of your text popped in. That's kind of weird. John from Huntsville, Phil, spectacular monologue. Also, have you heard about RFK Jr.'s latest plans to find out what causes autism? I have. It'll be interesting. We'll see. I don't know if he'll actually bird dog it down. There are times when autism, I think, became a catch-all and the spectrum began to be so wide. But there's also clearly indications that autism is diagnosable, absolutely. And I want to know if something in our environment is what is doing it. And then Chris from Gadsden sending in a picture that has it's not me. It is not me. Says, this is actually Phil in the disco era. It is not me. That is John Travolta. But I will settle for half his paycheck. How about that? All right, we're taking a break right now. I'll get more text messages and I'll dive right into this topic even more detail. No free lunch, y'all. No free lunch. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. Making common sense like a superpower. Regarding our sidebar comments a moment ago, Alicia from Athens says, I love classic rock just like you, but ABBA and the Bee Gees are classic pop. Bee Gees, some of the best harmonies ever, she says.
Oh, I love ABBA still.
You like ABBA? Oh, I
ABBA
can't do
is
it.
great.
Oh, God. ABBA's one of those lights to turn off when it comes on. It gets stuck in your head.
Well, I mean, it's just, I don't listen to them often, but they got good songs.
Okay. They've actually sold, they're one of the top selling acts of all time. I'm mistaken.
That's not surprising.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
I think they're played at every wedding I've been to.
A wedding singer's delight.
Yeah.
And I had one more that was, here it was, Ken from Harvest. Disco is dead. It was a safety issue. Polyester jumpsuits are flammable. And he said, I still like listening to ABBA. He says that too. Yeah. All right, listen, I got an article here from justthenews.com. Dateline yesterday. Trump administration is going to start collecting debts on student loans considered to be in default. So yeah, the Department of Education, by the way, is what administers this. And by the way, keep in mind too, it was the Obama administration that drew this back into government. All right. Student loans were student loans through banks. And then the Obama administration decided, you know what, we just need to administer these inside the government because, government can control everything. And so this huge multi-trillion-dollar loan process came through the Department of Education. Well, that's being divested now. We're going to try and get some of that corrected. But the end result is the Department of Education on Monday announced the federal government will begin collecting outstanding student loan debts that are in default next month. And that's a lot of them, by the way. And then student loan payments restarted last October after the last of the Biden administration's pause extensions lapsed. But more than 4 million borrowers are still at 90 to 180 days late. In other words, they got so used to being given grace that they just didn't even get back to paying. So the free lunch is over. The Trump administration, separate story that I pulled here off of Fox News, and I hold in my calloused former paratrooper hands, says those who default or refuse to pay their federal student loans could have their wages, their federal pensions, and their tax refunds garnished. Federal pensions? I didn't know they could do that. I thought that was tax, that was not garnishable. Anyway, the bottom line is if the government sees money out there with your name on it and you're not paying your student loan, just understand they're going to find a way to get it. Now, don't think I'm taking any kind of glee in this, all right? What I know is about to happen is a bunch of people who went out and bought a new car or got used to a lifestyle or who like to take trips and do all the things that comes with not having to pay your bills, you're about to have a life change. And I hate it for you, but that's the way it's going to be because the rest of the world decides when they can do things based upon what their debts are. There's a vast number of people right now, millions actually, millions, that have decided that they shouldn't have to pay back their debt. Why? Because Uncle Sugar Joe told them it was okay. Remember I said a minute in the monologue, they were told they're the victims. You signed on the dotted line. Let me ask you a question, JP. So you got your student loan. We talked about it a moment ago.
Yeah.
Was anybody standing there twisting your arm when the papers were signed?
Not that I recall, no.
You'd remember that, I think.
Yeah,
wouldn't you?
I would, yeah.
There was nobody standing there saying, look, we're going to make you an offer you can't refuse. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-mm.
Sign the papers, leave the cannoli. They didn't say that.
No. And then after I left school, I'm not throwing a hissy fit because it was agreement. So.
Yeah. Well, fair enough. And that's the thing. See, as an attorney, I can tell you, there's a thing called privity of contract. Privity of contract means you have a direct nexus to the contract itself. In other words, you're a party to the contract. Or at the very least, you are in some way in privity with it, like maybe you're the lender or you're... Bottom line is, there are people who have privity, and we, the taxpayers, have no privity with your debt. So that's where, if I'm sounding heartless and you've got some family, or maybe you yourselves are thinking, oh my gosh, I got to start paying these. I thought I wasn't going to have to. I thought you were going to erase the debt. I'm sorry for you, but I'm not so sorry that I want to take it on for you. I mean, I understand benevolence, and I listen. I've worked in the 501c3 environment. I've worked in full-time ministry. I know what it means to have a paycheck that is tied to other people's giving. That's different, though. I still had to do the work to receive it. I had a GI Bill. That's how I got through law school. But I also know that I had to go do the service before I was allowed to get the GI Bill. The situation with the student loans, not so much. They sign on the dotted line, they get the cash in advance, but they do it with a promise to repay, or else, because the or else is what in the legal parlance we call the remedies. And if you look, virtually every contract is going to have a remedies section that says, in the event of a default or breach of contract, the following is going to happen. And what you're seeing right now is the Trump administration is not saying, these are things we just feel like doing and they're not part of the contract, but we're just going to do it anyway. They're not doing that. What they're saying is, in conjunction with the contract provisions, they will come after wages, federal pensions, and tax refunds. It's going to get rough on some people, I guarantee you. I also think what's about to happen is there's going to be several people out there who suddenly find their sense of responsibility. And I hope that's true. It's sort of like watching the deportation effort right now result in some self-deportations. Same is going to be true, I believe, that there are a number of people out there who were given a pass for the last several years. Hey, that $300 a month payment you've got, you know what? I ain't making it. That's a great car payment. I just got a better apartment now. I can take that trip. I can go do all the things. Not no mo. And it's gonna result in some life change. But I do believe though that there are some people who are gonna wake up and go, okay, I'm not gonna let my credit be destroyed. We're gonna start paying on this. And I hope that's the case. Because otherwise the awakening is gonna be even ruder. By the way, did you catch the part I said earlier about how many Americans? 42 million Americans have student loans. Y'all, the population of the United States is only, what, 340 million? Is that right? That's what we're looking at there. 42 million. My gosh, that's like, what, 14% of the United States has a student loan. $1.7 trillion in student loans out there. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We'll wrap this up on the flip side. Y'all stay tuned. Hour number 2 coming up.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, covering down on all the issues. And oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to hour number 2 on a hump day. We got plenty to talk about. I'm still in dipper number 1, the no free lunch. Talking about student loans. And I got a few text messages I'll get real quick before I jump back into the actual content that I had in my holding my calloused former paratrooper hands. Brian from Decatur checks in. He says, a perfect example of how college is mostly garbage. Woo. He said, you pretty much have to repeat a lot of high school classes your first and second year before you even get to your major studies. Why did I have to take algebra in college when I took calculus in high school? It's a great question. I can't answer it, but you make a point. It's like they don't trust the fact that maybe you actually learned something in high school. But there's also, there's clipping. You can get a chance to skip if you can prove things on your ACT. And then, what's also interesting is I was the sponsor. It was my bill in the legislature for the dual enrollment. You can enroll in a college level class while you are in high school, and you can come out with, you can start when you're a junior and come out with a 2-year, junior college degree and being a nurse's aide or a welder or whatever else. There's no telling what you can do with that. So there's options.
That's part of why I went to freshman year fine, because freshman year was a breeze at Alabama.
Freshman year was high school
Yep.
2.0.
Didn't have to study much. But then I got slapped with my first accounting class, and I had to rethink life.
Yeah, I quickly learned. I wanted to be a geology major, believe it or not.
That was my freshman roommate was a geology major.
And nobody told me, hey, Phil, by the way, your gifts are not lying in like upper level sciences and maths.
Oh, it's hard. I mean, he was having to take hours and hours on one homework assignment. It's not easy.
JT, then I went to law school. So
Yeah.
JT Lacey Springs says, monologue reminds me of the ads. You have tax or credit card debt, you don't have to pay. Yes, you do. Yeah. Charles from Decatur, we got that. Thank you very much, Charles, for giving us a heads up on something on the website. We took care of it, or we're taking care of it. Thomas from Athens said, it's unfortunate the U.S. government creates loans, e.g. borrows for Social Security or Federal Reserve bonds, that they may never pay back. Agreed. Scott from Athens says, breaking news. Okay, we need to check on this. Judge Boasberg orders Trump to take down the American flag, put up the trans-pedo, Venezuelan, Mexican, and also the UN flags on the White House lawn. Pretty sure that's not news.
I'm pretty sure that's satire.
And then TL from Huntsville gives us a big amen. Thank you. Says, amen to you, Phil, and the Trump administration. Time for some grown-up responsibility. Pay your bills. Be an adult enough to plan ahead, to pay what you take on. Actually, that's his first text popping in that didn't come in the first time. And now it's in twice. I can't explain it. You're doubly good, TL. I got a piece here from the New York Post. New York Post talks about the fact that Linda McMahon, the education secretary, she wrote a pretty scathing op-ed in the Wall Street Journal that came out over the weekend, I believe. This is Dateline today. Says the Department of Education, having announced that it would start recouping federal student repayments beginning on May 5th, so they got about 2 weeks, from the roughly 5.3 million borrowers who are in default. Linda McMahon has a statement about this. She said, quote, colleges and universities call themselves nonprofits, but for years they have profited massively off the federal subsidy of loans, hiking up tuitions, piling up multi-billion-dollar endowments, while students graduate 6 figures in the red. That's true. She said a widely cited 2015 study found that for every dollar of increased federal caps on subsidized loan, colleges raise their tuition by 60 cents. Wow. It's a racket, man. So basically what they're saying is every time they raise the amount that would be available for student loans, the tuition happened to go up in correspondence to the available federal funds. And by the way, what that also means is everybody else who's not getting a student loan is also paying the higher rates for tuition. So it's an absolute racket. And the colleges, they have massive endowments. And I don't fault them for having endowments. That's called wisdom. That's called setting aside money. That's what you and I should be doing, right? But the truth of the matter is, if you're doing it in a mercenary way, especially the public universities, man, the public universities, they belly up to the trough from the legislature of each state, and they get their full appropriation, and then they turn around and they raise their rates for both in-state and out-of-state tuition. And then, oh, by the way, they suck down all kinds of student loans for worthless degrees. And then, they still make scads of money on everything else from NIL to God knows what. It's absolutely amazing how much money's in universities these days.
Student loans and credit cards. I think those are two. They take way too great advantage of young people, I'd say.
I would agree. And you know what? It's also amazing. I'm a business owner. So I have done, the things necessary to make sure the business has what it needs to function. Sometimes you got to have a credit card because you have to reserve a flight for something or whatever. So we got all they want personal guarantees, and they want all these things tacked on to everything you do, even though it's related to your business. And yet a college student will get a thing in the mail that says, "Would you like $10,000 on a credit card?" They'll give it to him in the mail.
Yep.
And then me running a business, doing everything right and paying all the bills, they want blood. You have any birthmarks? How much is your firstborn child worth? It's nuts. So listen, here's the bottom line. I'm gonna tell you right now that there are examples of colleges out there that won't take federal funds, and there's very few. One of them is right here in Alabama, and it does an amazing job. But that's Highlands College. Highlands College, which is birthed out of Church of the Highlands. And if you haven't seen it, by the way, you ought to go online and look. Highlands College raised all the money through charitable causes and pretty much finances its students complete. And they have a large student body now. They are fully accredited, and they have massive facilities in Birmingham. It's a beautiful campus, and they are doing God's work. Then there's Hillsdale College. Hillsdale College, room, board, tuition is still $45,000 a year, but they take no federal monies, none. Harvard, by the way, is mad because they're not going to get $9 billion in federal funds. Harvard, $9 billion. Hillsdale won't take a penny of federal because they know what it means. They'll have stringers attached to it. Okay, anyway. How about this? You took out a student loan, please pay your bills. Don't ruin your credit, and don't make us pay it for you. Just saying.
I think that's the big part. Just don't make us pay it.
Yeah.
Why do we have to fix your mistake? And I feel bad for you if you were counting on the government to save you, but
Uncle Sugar is on vacation. Lisa from Huntsville says no student loans. Went to the University of Alabama on the Alabama GI Bill because my dad died while on active duty. Well, thank you for your dad's service. He also served in Korea. She said, anyway, I got a history degree, didn't use it, but I'm great at Trivial Pursuit and engaging at cocktail parties. I feel certain that you are based upon your text. Thank you very much, Lisa. Thomas from Athens says, regarding college funding, if you can find a degree program and get into a company or government cooperative program or summer job deal like I did, you're assured your degree will have value, plus you earn income along the way to help pay for undergrad degree. Plus, I'll add to that there, Thomas, that also means you're probably first in line for hiring because you're a known entity to that company you co-opt with. So, good point. Chris from Athens says, I had to take out loans due to my parents not having the money to help me. And when I got out of college, I paid them back, and it was a lot. And I have no pity for any of these people who took out loans, got no degree or a BS degree. You borrow it, you pay it. Perfectly said, Chris. And look, let me add one more piece to this, and then I'll close this topic. There is a notion right now that the government should be allowed to pick winners and losers, and that's not the way government's supposed to work. If the government is of the people, by the people, and for the people, that means all the people, not just some of the people. What the Biden administration did was what it usually does. It divided people up into little small groups. You get something, you don't. You matter, you don't. And that's not the way government is supposed to work. A fair and representative government is supposed to be even-keeled across the board. And the very idea that a vast swath of society is allowed to go ahead and say, we just don't feel like paying our debts, and they get a pass, is not anything but the government picking the winners and the losers. Here's my point. I said it in my monologue, but I'm going to describe it in more detail right now. You got two 24-year-olds. One of them went to college, got an underwater basket weaving degree, borrowed $50,000, came out of college and doesn't want to pay the bill, but he's got a degree in underwater basket weaving, a worthless degree. Now he's trying to find a job doing something, anything, if at all, maybe living in mommy's basement. I don't know. You got another 24-year-old. This kid goes and gets his, let's pick one. Let's say he got his journeyman's plumbing certificate. He worked in the trades and he earned the right to take the test. And then he had to borrow $50,000 to start his own company. But he's had the dream of having his own, plumbing business. And he borrows the money. And then he looks to his neighbor and he sees the $50,000 debt get erased. And the kid's scot-free and has got no debt and can decide whether he wants to play Call of Duty tonight or not. The other kid is staying up late at night trying to balance the books and make things work because he's going to pay back the $50,000 he had to borrow to be an entrepreneur and start a business. The government looked at them differently, apparently. The one who had the worthless degree gets a pass. The one who borrowed money and joined the economy and began to be a driver in his community is the one over here who's still carrying the burden of his debt, but he did so knowingly, just like the other one did, but he didn't get a pass. That's the government picking winners and losers, and that should never be allowed to happen. And that's why I'm glad, on top of all the rest of it, on top of all the fiscal issues and upon all the things about pay back your debt and all that, the other thing I'm glad to see is the Trump administration is ending the cycle of the government getting to pick the winners and losers in society. Bam. Make that into a short video, brother. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We're taking a break right now. We'll come right back. Time to change gears. How about this? Let's talk about some alien enemies. Oh, yeah, they're out there. Alien enemies. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Making common sense like a superpower. What were you and I talking about? Oh, yeah, you said the NIL thing. That was interesting. So before we leave this whole idea of accountability and following through on your promises, what did you just tell me a minute ago about Nico from Tennessee?
So the Nico Imaliava saga of him going to UCLA, holding out from practice, all
Nico,
that
I'm
nonsense.
leaving.
Yeah, Nico Amalivia. Yeah. So his younger brother was committed to Arkansas out of high school and had already signed an NIL contract with Arkansas. And when Nico left Tennessee to go to UCLA, he goes, I think I'm just going to go to UCLA with my brother and transfer to UCLA. Well, now Arkansas is suing
Wow.
Madden Imaliava, which is his brother, for I've seen up to $200,000 of NIL money that was already given to him. And
He already had some advance money and he left anyway?
and breach a contract for I don't know how long his contract was, but
What a chucklehead.
yeah. But people are also looking at that and saying, well, Tennessee could do the same thing with Nico for a lot more money because Nico signed a 4-year contract with Tennessee out of high school, NIL contract. So
Listen, this is okay. So first of all, some of these kids are minors. I don't know how old the brother was. What's his name?
Madden.
Hamana Amalivia?
Madden Amalivia, the brother, I
Okay,
think is
Madden?
17 to 18. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I would assume his parents probably had to co-sign whatever contracts because he's likely a minor.
Yeah.
State law in Alabama, you can't have a 17-year-old signing a contract like that unless you have, maybe some kind of, parental consent or something. But I doubt it. You're not going to see anybody sell a 17-year-old a car like that with a contract all on their own, unless they've been emancipated under the law. But yeah, I mean, I look at that and think, okay, where were the parents? And then at the same time, did the kid even understand what contract law? That's one of the reasons why they don't let kids sign contracts because it's there's no other way to say that except to use like legal parlance. It's a sophisticated opportunity that requires someone to have the mental capacity to recognize what they're getting into.
Yeah. And I mean, you mentioned where the parents, I mean, his dad was leading the charge for Nico to get more money. I mean, he was telling his son to hold out of practice and asking around at Oregon and other schools if they could pay his son more money. So his dad is not a great influence in this whole scenario. But I agree. I don't know if somebody actually sat down with Nico or Madden and was like, look, you signed this contract. It's an agreement. You can't just get cold feet and go, somewhere else. But it's just another example of the mess of NIL.
Okay. This is like a whole different dipper almost, but there's so much to be said here. There's the sense of accountability and responsibility for having signed an agreement and then even received some consideration. They call it consideration in the legal world. Some consideration there. They gave you money, and then you didn't follow through. But then the other piece is there's such a lack of loyalty. I mean, it's. And I know it's not all of them. There are some kids. What's the guy's name who was such a great back for Boise State, who was not
Ashton Jeanty.
Ashton Jeanty was not going to leave his team.
Nope.
You got to know he could have made some serious NIL somewhere else.
Oh, he was offered millions to go elsewhere and decided not to.
He wasn't going to do it. He's going to play on that bluegrass and stay there with his team because he's going to dance with the one that brung him to the dance, But so there's so much of that missing nowadays. Between the portal and NIL, we have almost bred a lack of loyalty into kids.
Yeah, but I think that goes hand in hand with what we were talking about with these young kids and student loans. They don't have long-term thinking. They just think short-term. And I bet you Madden and Nico, when they signed those contracts, just saw that as money in the bank right now. Oh, you're agreeing to give me money? Okay. But I don't think they thought the other end of the deal of, oh, I actually have to hold up to my end of the deal. And so Arkansas's not letting Madden get out of it, or his parents. I think this is probably more directed at his dad.
And I'd be curious if that $200,000 was a quote unquote non-refundable, cash signing bonus, but he still didn't follow through. I guarantee you they're going to have provisions in that contract that gives them remedies. And the dad is just teaching the kid how to be irresponsible and lack loyalty.
Yeah.
And he's gonna grow up that way. His marriage is going to reflect it one day, or marriages. His jobs are going to reflect it one day. And then what happens if he has an injury? He's going to have learned nothing that will carry him forward in life. Just messed up.
It's a mess, yeah.
It is absolutely messed up. All right, we're going to jump into this next topic coming back from the break, and it's the Alien Enemies. Y'all, this Alien Enemies Act, first of all, I admire the fact that Trump had experts combing the books to find a law that is still on the books since 1798 and is still good law and has only been used 3 times in the history of the United States. And he found it. I mean, first of all, what lawyer found that? Because there's so little case precedent to even find that law. I don't know how in the world they pulled that one out of a hat, but they did. And so I totally admire the legal standing to jump in there and say, oh, look at that existing law. We're going to work with it. That's all they did. The courts can't stand it. Liberals are having a come apart. And I'll tell you right now, between the liberal media and the liberal courts, it's like uphill battle to get anything done on deportation. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. Goes from Huntsville back over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden. I mean, all the way down to that loveliest little village on the plains we call Auburn. And yes, straight across the border from there to what we now call, once again, Fort Benning. And then big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi thrown in just for good measure. Next topic, Dipper number 2, alien enemies. And by the way, there's a breaking story that just came out. Fox News has the exclusive on this. Go figure, they got the exclusive. But Fox News has the exclusive. It's on the website right now. I don't have it in my calloused former paratrooper hands, but I'll tell you what it says. Exclusive. The FBI assesses that some Venezuelan government officials likely facilitated the migration of members of the violent gang Tren de Aragua from Venezuela to the United States in order to advance the Maduro's regime's objective of undermining public safety in the U.S. Think about that. That means there were actual government officials with a stated purpose of, we're going to make it more difficult for Americans to live in their own country. We're going to ship them some of our most violent gang members. Tren de Aragua. Listen, Alien Enemies Act applies. The Alien Enemies Act of 1798 changes the status of certain people. If they are found here in the United States, they can be immediately gathered up and deported without the usual due process requirements. It's got the liberals up in arms because the liberals who wanted no due process on getting them in wants all kinds of due process to get them out. They don't want to wait in line to come in, but they just want to wait in line before they have to go out. I mean, think about that. It's just asinine. But Phil, they're here now. It applies. Does it really? Under the Alien Enemies Act, it does not. But Phil, they're not really enemies. We're not at war with Tren de Aragua. Are we not? Really? Here's my point. And I've said it before on the show, but I haven't heard nobody else saying this, so I'm just going to go ahead and claim it. If you look at the non-state actors that are considered to be enemies of the United States, like I said, non-state actors. In other words, they are entities, but they are not geographically bound entities. You've got Al-Qaeda. You've got ISIS. You've got any number of other terrorist organizations that have no geography of their own. The Houthis. Oh, but Phil, they're in Yemen. No, they don't. They're not the Yemeni government. The same with, now Hamas maybe, because they're technically the government of Gaza, the Palestinian Authority, but Hezbollah, no. The same with the drug cartels, and the same with Tren de Aragua, and the same with MS-13. These are violent entities that have organizational effort, and they are a danger and a threat to the United States. And Trump has declared them to be enemies of the state. I love it. In fact, I'm still waiting for somebody to laze the target and drop a JDAM right down the middle of the chimney of a drug cartel's, lair in Mexico. I'm for it. In the meantime, the FBI has just released a report that says they believe the Venezuelan government actually facilitated members of Tren de Aragua coming here because they had a stated purpose of wanting to undermine public safety in the U.S. That is amazing. Now, let's talk about this for a little bit. The Alien Enemies Act. Who's the poster child for that right now on the Democrat side? Who's their hero? Who's their puppy they must save? Who's their cause celeb right now? Well, it's, you know him, Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Just so you know, I got a piece here from Newsbusters. They did a complete review. The two most liberal cable networks, CNN and MSNBC, have basically misrepresented the story of Kilmar Abrego Garcia multiple times. A total of 506 times they referred to him as the Maryland man.
The Maryland father.
The Maryland father, the resident of Maryland. He was described as being from Maryland nearly 5 times more often than he was described as being from El Salvador. He's an illegal alien from El Salvador who happened to be living in Maryland. 10% of the 318 reports about Garcia on CNN and MSNBC included any mention that he was in the U.S. illegally. And by the way, there's no supposition on that. He was in the U.S. illegally by his own admission. He was already on ICE's detainer list. He had been detained in 2019 and was released on parole and thereafter sought asylum because he was scared to go home because there's a gang out there that might want to get him. Barrio 18 was after him. CNN and MSNBC coverage of Kilmar Abrego Garcia just from the first 2.5 weeks of April. 506 times they called him the Maryland man, the Maryland father, or some other misleading term. In 161 stories, MSNBC only bothered to mention 11 times that he was in the U.S. illegally. CNN mentioned him 21 times across as being illegal across 157 different segments. It goes on. I don't need to keep saying it. But, I know what. Let me do this, though. Garcia's wife filed a protective order. State of Tennessee detained him on concerns about human trafficking. MSNBC only mentioned that 5 times. CNN only mentioned it 25 times. It's unreal. But what we're looking at right now is the Alien Enemies Act. It's probably one of the most artful means of using existing law to do the things that the people of this nation voted for their leaders to do. Let's not lose sight of that. This is not Trump going, I got a Trump thing. I'm doing a Trump thing. You do you, I'll do me. No. He got an overwhelming vote on one of the top issues at all times being the illegal immigration issue. That and the economy, top 2 issues. Stephen Miller, who works for the Trump administration as a U.S. Homeland Security advisor, Stephen Miller has been wearing liberals out. Now, that guy talks so fast I can't hardly keep up sometimes.
He's he almost talks more like Trump than Trump does sometimes, of like the finger animations and all. Yeah, he's great.
But his command of facts is unparalleled. He can regurgitate some facts. Like I look at it, I hear him say things sometimes and I go, whew, wish I'd said that.
Yeah.
So he slammed the Democrat Party on their opposition to the Alien Enemies Act. He said this, he said, quote, on a Fox News interview, he said, I think it's emblematic of the fact that the Democrat Party has been thoroughly and completely radicalized. They're an open borders party. They're a communist party. They're a party that excuses violence and left-wing terrorism. They're a party polling at 21%. And then he went on to say, if they keep fighting to spring illegal alien gang members loose from foreign countries and bring them back to terrorize our families, that 21% is going to go down to 15 or 10 and lower because Americans, above all else, expect their government to keep them safe. Yeah, what you're watching right now, that is one of the prime functions of government. You know, I'm not a big government guy. You probably gathered that by now. I'm not a big government guy. But I do agree that government is a necessary thing. And in being a necessary thing, government has what are known as essential functions. The essential functions of government, what are they? Well, it depends on whether it's local, state, or federal. But one of the essential functions of government is the police power to enforce crime, to enforce the laws against crime, and to provide a measure of safety for the citizens who pay their taxes and live peacefully. At the local level, that means a police department. At the federal level, that can mean the FBI, the CIA, the military, all of it. But what I'm saying is, what Trump is doing is exactly what not only did we vote for him to do, it's what he's required to do. He has to. It's part of his constitutional mandate. Now, the whole thing about whether or not they can deport gangs under the Illegal Aliens Act has become a judicial tennis match. It's back on, it's back off. It's back on, it's back off. So Trump finally lashed out. You know, we had the Supreme Court saying, good to go, you can pursue it. Then they came back and said, stop what you're doing. We need to give you more direction on whether there needs to be full due process. Well, Trump's finally had enough. Never wanted to hold back. He finally just said, this is ridiculous, which is, yeah, that's pretty spot on. Trump said, we cannot give everyone a trial because here's the thing. There's millions There are millions. There are hundreds of thousands right now that are illegal alien gang members. And he says if we gave every single one of them a trial, it would take, without exaggeration, 200 years. It said we would need hundreds of thousands of trials for the hundreds of thousands of illegals that we're sending out of the country. Such a thing is not possible. What a ridiculous situation we're in. Make America great again. This is in relation to the Supreme Court stepping out in basically after midnight on Friday night, it's a Saturday morning, and blocking the Trump administration's efforts to try and deport a batch of illegal aliens. And they were all gang members headed to the Secot prison in El Salvador. I do appreciate, though, the fact that Justice Samuel Alito did not take kindly to the way this all went down. I mean, at first you had Judge Boasberg got slapped around by the Supreme Court. The Trump administration was challenging his attempts to enjoin the activities of the Alien Enemies Act being used. And the Trump administration successfully argued that, they gave them advance notification. They allowed them to challenge their detention and deportation. They gave them the whole right to file habeas claims. And the Supreme Court agreed. And then the Supreme Court appeared to change things. ACLU filed a request for intervention. There were 50 Venezuelan immigrants about to be deported from the Bluebonnet Detention Center in North Texas. And the Supreme Court of the United States said, stop what you're doing there, Trump. Hold what you got. Don't send them out yet. And now Trump is like, now what? This is what we call a disparity in the law. They've already said he could. Now they say he can't. Now they're going to come back and say he can, but only with due process. And they're not going to define what due process means. How much due process do they have to have? And oh, by the way, since you said I could use the Alien Enemies Act, which says they don't have to have due process, then what measure of due process are you going to require? So the end result is he's not stopping. And that's the important part. He is not stopping. When I get back from this break, I'll tell you about a few things that are going on right now. But we did have a victory. We did have a couple of victories. And we also got some new use of the Alien Enemies Act on a group that we haven't seen before. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Pulling pins on truth grenades. So, finishing this up, this section on the Alien Enemies Act and the aura surrounding it right now. I will tell you this. One setback that we experienced last night is, once again, ABC reporting as of this morning that another federal judge in New York has now rebuked President Donald Trump's use of the Alien Enemies Act to deport alleged gang members without due process. He calls it a medieval inquisition. Shut up. You've got to be kidding me. U.S. District Judge Alvin Hellerstein, at a hearing on Tuesday, temporarily extended his April 9th order, which temporarily blocked detained migrants. In other words, what he's basically doing is saying, no, I'm not letting you. No, I'm not letting you. No, I'm still not letting you. I'm not letting you even longer now. Hellerstein said, this is the United States of America. People are being thrown out of the country because of their tattoos. Okay, this is a judge with an agenda. Wow. He said the law is clear. If you're kicking out a person, you give them an opportunity to defend themselves. You can't kick out someone by guilt by association. Yes, listen, if they're a member of the gang having been designated an alien enemy, then yes, actually you can. Now, we did have one plus up. So one of the things that's happened in recent years is under the Biden administration, the Alejandro Mayorkas and the State Department, Department of Homeland Security and the State Department both began to upfund NGOs on illegal immigration, and like to the tune of billions of dollars to these non-governmental organizations, one of which is chapters of Catholic Charities. They got $1.13 billion themselves just to do what's called refugee and entrant assistance. It went on. There's other groups out there that, Global Refuge, Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service. Anyway, billions of dollars. Trump administration is shutting it down. We refer to it as the immigration industrial complex. And the Trump administration is shutting it down. And as a result, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops announced they would not renew any further agreements with the federal government on these children's and refugee services. What that basically means is they threw in the towel after making billions, but they still threw in the towel. Finally. How about this? Last one before we go to the break. The Alien Enemies Act. Trump's not stopping, by the way, and that's an important piece. What I appreciate is he is using the systems available to him, taking all legal steps necessary to pursue every avenue he can. And oh, by the way, when he experiences a setback, he's not stopping everything he's doing. He's going to continue to work. His administration is on the money, and they're about to name another group. I got this from American Military News. Dateline today. The U.S. is planning to designate certain Haitian gangs as foreign terrorists, opening the way to use the El Salvador Secot prison to house them. Haitian gangs and individuals financing and arming them soon could find themselves labeled terrorists and imprisoned in El Salvador's maximum security prison. The U.S. State Department has, been naming the Tren de Aragua and MS-13s. They're now looking at naming two major violent groups out of Haiti as foreign terrorist organizations. That's huge, but it's right here in our hemisphere. Keep that in mind. And Haiti's deepening instability is seen to be a risk to our hemisphere because it creates not just a fallen state. It creates a safe haven then for criminals and for terrorist entities and for any number of other things that become a human. The human toll becomes too great for us to ignore. And so they are naming the Grand Grif and the Viv Ansam gangs potentially as terrorist organizations. And that would mean they'd be subject then to the Alien Enemies Act. Because remember the CHNV visa that the Biden administration had? The one they brought in Cuban, Haitian, Nicaraguan, Venezuelan. Well, there's Haitian. If they brought in a ton of Haitians and they were members of these two gangs, they may find themselves in Secot here real quick.
We were talking, or you were talking earlier about the Supreme Court not being able to define due process and who should be, subject to due process. Can we just get somehow a ruling from the Supreme Court on that. Like, instead of like having a case by case, well, they need due process, they don't, whatever. I wish we could just have a Supreme Court case where they define due process and blanket who gets due process and who doesn't. Like, I wish they could just give a ruling on that. And I would hope that they rule, if you're in this country illegally, you are not subject to due process.
Or at the very least, rule that due process requirements are modified ex and so under the Alien Enemies Act.
Yes.
Because at least that one, we know, was codified by a congressional action and has been the law of the land now for 2.5 centuries.
It's, the wishy-washy or, yep, here, no, there, actually, it's like just, I wish we could just get a ruling from the Supreme Court to stop all of this. I mean, they're going to find, the activist judges are going to find a way to be roadblocks again, but I think due process is the main one that
I think the other thing that we really need too is we need Supreme Court to weigh in on the idea of these federal injunctions that blanket the entire nation, when it was really people who were in one district.
Yeah. Didn't they rule that like if a case is going on in Texas, some judge in Washington can't rule on it?
Yeah.
I'm happy with that ruling. But
more to come.
Yeah.
More to come. All right, listen, we're taking a break here momentarily. Coming back for the Grand Council. Oh, I love this section. Yep. This is going to be myself, Jeff Poore from FM Talk 106.5 and 1819 News, and then Yaffe checking in place of the usual Dale Jackson. The Grand Council coming up next, hour number 3. We will be right back.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, sometimes the international, and oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to hour number three. Hour number three here on a hump day. We're going to get you all the way to go home time on a Friday afternoon. But in the meantime, it is the third hour of a hump day afternoon, which means we got to go to a thing we call the Grand Council, where I bring in two of my brethren in talk radio, and we just ping each other with questions and see where the chips fall. And sometimes we agree, and sometimes we don't, but we love each other nonetheless. So let me just call the roll real quick. From down yonder in South Alabama in Mobile, FM Talk 1065, host of the Jeff Poor Show, editor-in-chief for 1819 News. Oh, by the way, works with Breitbart and Lanyap and all that. Jeff Poor, are you there?
Hi, President.
You are indeed, and we're glad of it. All right, and then turning northward, proxy today for the absent Dale Jackson. Basically, he's the host of the Yaffee program on 770 AM, 92.5 FM WVNN out of Huntsville. Also, by the way, the host of Yaffee Live on FM 102.3 out of Chattanooga afternoons. Yaffee, are you there?
I am here.
We're glad of it. Thank you for standing in, brother.
Sounds good.
I pronounce a quorum. Hit it, man.
Assemble the Grand Council.
Ba-da. All right, as always, too, the Grand Council brought to you on Wednesdays by DeKalb MD, Healthcare Simplified. I'll tell you more about DeKalb MD in just a few minutes. But let me go Jeff Poor first. What is your question for the crew?
So Dick Durbin's announced retirement today.
Woo.
The fourth Democrat U.S. Senator to announce not running for re-election in the next cycle. Puts it with Tina Smith, Gary Peters, Gene Shaheen, and now Dick Durbin. Do we read anything into that as that pertains to the midterms?
Well, I'll jump in first and say it's actually 5. You left off Mitch McConnell.
Well, he's not doing it.
Yeah, I think right now what they're watching is two things. I think they're seeing that the winds of change are not in their favor. And secondly, they're seeing that their base is getting so far to the left that it's getting more and more frustrating to try and tie themselves to a group they don't even really recognize. So that's my first thought. I really think that, and I also think too, these are, if I'm thinking through the names you just listed, you're talking about folks who've been up there for a long time, and really it's about time for them to clear house and go to the House. That's my thought on it. Yaff, what do you think?
I'm not sure I read too much into it. I tend to think what you said, the second thing you said there, is kind of the reality. It was their time to go. I don't know. I know there's some division in the Democrat Party, but with some things going on right now, I mean, the Democrats could still do pretty well in the midterms. So for them to kind of run away now, I'm just not sure that's the case.
Well, and I don't even know too, though. Jeff, weigh in on your own question. Are they in areas where they were at risk if they ran again?
Not necessarily. Michigan, maybe. New Hampshire, maybe a long shot. Minnesota, a little bit. But certainly not Illinois at all. But I would say this. I think I would read into the Durbin announcement as like, hey, you might not get to be in leadership in the majority. It may not happen this time. It can happen in the House, but it may not happen in the Senate. I'd add to this though. I think these guys on the Democrat side are going to face some kind of Republican challenger, a potentially expensive general election cycle, and just like who wants to deal with it. So look. It may not be like expanding majorities, but it tells me the Democrats think that this election cycle could be a little bit harder.
Yeah.
Than probably some of our friends in the media will tell us it is.
Yeah, I don't think the midterms are going to be super friendly to the left. And I'll tell you too, Dick Durbin, he's 80 years old. I mean, I just had JP look it up for me. He's 80 years old. I mean, my gosh, do you really want to be there and be Strom Thurmond and head into your second century as a U.S. senator? I wouldn't think so. So he needs to retire. All right, next question. Yaffe, I'm going to throw it to you, man. You're proxy in for Dale today. Take it and run, brother. What question do you have for us?
It's kind of a general question, but I want to know what bill that has been maybe making its way through the Alabama legislature that hasn't passed that you would like to see pass. Is there anything out there that you're frustrated hasn't passed yet?
Well, me personally, it's one I had somebody on the show about yesterday. I am fed up with the idea that we can't possibly oppose Google and Apple and big tech porn and actually just turn on a porn filter that protects kids. And
that's a good one.
That bill is in its second or third year of trying to get passage. And this year it passed the Senate first, and it's now running down to the House where it did pass last year. So there's no reason for it not to pass. But what I'm hearing is that a second bill that would also sort of assist, that would require just age verification on apps being downloaded onto kids' phones, that one is in trouble because leadership doesn't want to buck Apple and Google too much in one session. I'm thinking that's asinine. It's kids we're talking about. So that one, I got a lot of angst about that. I used to work with kids professionally, and I used to work with them in a treatment center, and I've seen what happens with kids who've been abused. And there are so many kids at risk, and part of it can be prevented so easily with low-hanging fruit like passing those two bills. There's nothing that prevents it from being passed. Jeff, what do you think? You're down there a lot. What are you seeing that you want to see passed?
Birmingham Waterworks Board.
Oh, man.
That's got to happen. It's got to happen this year. Democrats had an opportunity to work out some kind of agreement. They have been intransigent. They have, this is very emblematic, guys, of the problem with the Alabama State Senate. Two Democrats running the show. You want something, you got to go kiss their ring, or they will stand in the way. And you shouldn't have that Republican supermajority. Well, once finally Jabba Wagner saw some virtue in this, and we started cloture Democrats. Dan Roberts has the bill. Jim Carnes has it in the House. Once and for all, put to end this Democrat corrupt Birmingham playground that it should have been ended a long time ago. It's time for the legislature to make it happen.
Oh, I agree with that. And that's that's one that doesn't cross state borders per se, except when you describe it as corruption. For those of our listeners in Chattanooga, the Birmingham Waterworks Board has been the seed of corruption. It's one of the most corrupt entities in the entire state of Alabama. And you wouldn't think that it would, but it's like you're talking like hundreds of millions of dollars that have gone through there, and the accountability is just zilcho. And the level of, people have gone to jail out of that place, and yet it still rocks on like nobody can make a change. And I think the legislature needs to hand it to them on a silver platter. It's your own question, Yaffe. What do you want to see passed?
I want to see a bill. It passed the Senate, I believe, unless, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it has not passed the House yet, to teach success sequence in schools. I don't know if you guys looked at that. Arthur Orr put it forward. It's the idea that you merely teach in schools that the best way to have success, or the best thing that gives you chances, is you teach, graduate high school, go to college or get a job, get married, and then have kids. There's a similar bill passed in Tennessee, and it would add it to like sort of the family curriculum. To me, it's like common sense. But Orr told me that there's been a hard time. There's been a lot of pushback by Democrats in the House. They're really upset about teaching that, which to me is just basic common sense.
Are they arguing that some of their constituencies would be offended by it, or are they saying they just don't believe in the sequence? Oh, okay. So
yeah, it's offensive. You don't have to, you could be a single mom and be successful, which
sure.
I mean, true, there are exceptions to the rule, but you would think overall, and all the studies back it up, and they're mentioned in the bill. But he said he got a lot more pushback from members of the House, and he got a bunch of emails back on it that he wasn't expecting.
Okay. All right. Wow. All right. Tell you what, I got about a minute and a half. I'll do a quick question. Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense. There's been a whole lot of chatter about whether or not he's going down in flames, whether he's going to be the next Michael Flynn who has to leave the administration within the first 90 days. Your thoughts, real quickly, is it going to happen or ain't it? Yaffe, you first.
Not anytime soon. It could happen maybe a little bit down the line, but right now, no.
I agree. Jeff, what do you think?
Absolutely not. Trump can't buckle here. He has to stick with his guy. He cannot give these guys an opening at all.
I agree. I think that's exactly it. I think, first of all, I think he's doing a great job. And secondly, I think Trump can't cave, because if he does, they will not be satisfied, because they're never satisfied. They'll be looking for the next blood in the water. That'll just they'll whet their appetite. So I agree completely. All right, that's it. Round one of the Grand Council. I'm with Jeff Poor from FM Talk 106.5 and 1819 News, and Yaffe from WVNN in Huntsville and up yonder in Chattanooga at 102.3. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just saving the world one soundbite at a time. All right, we're back for round two of the Grand Council. Two of my brethren in talk radio, Jeff Poor and Yaffe. First question, second round. Jeff Poor, what you got?
So the big hot State House rumor today, what's Tuberville going to do? And I guess the last 4 or 5 days I've been fielding calls that the announcement was supposed to come today. And then we started hearing it around the State House a little more. Well, no, maybe it's going to come tomorrow. What are you guys hearing? Anybody, any VIPs lighting you up about the Tuberville rumors?
Yeah, I've been hearing some pretty in-depth stuff. I'll be honest with you. He's going to run as far as I'm concerned. At this point, I will be shocked if he doesn't. How about that? And I think at that point too, his name ID propels him to the top tier of what's to be expected. The question then becomes, what's Ainsworth going to do? Because everybody knows that Ainsworth has had his eyes on the governorship, and if he's got to spend millions to overcome the name ID giant in the room, I don't know that he can do it. So I think the second question that almost has to be followed up with that, Jeff, is what would Ainsworth do? Would he go to D.C. as a U.S. senator? Would he just get out of politics? What would happen then? Yaffe, you're welcome to weigh in, but I kind of want to blend my question with Jeff's.
Well, every time I will say, every time I bring up the issue and talk about the residency issue, which is always brought up, man, people get passionate about it on both sides. There's either people that really want Ainsworth, so they say, oh, he can't run, that's it. And then other people will be like, no, that's settled. It's not a problem. He'll be fine. So if he ends up running against Ainsworth, it's going to be pretty interesting, I think.
So Jeff, you're hearing what right now?
My guess is, and this is purely speculation, but that's what we do on radio, grossly speculate.
Yep.
He'll announce to like an inner circle or something, probably while he's in state. Obviously, he was in Huntsville today, Cash Patel and Katie Britt alongside. And he'll probably maybe some kind of fundraiser or something. There's people who are going to know that he's running for governor, but I would expect a big rollout probably in May, where it'll be a little more. Now, here's something to think about, guys. Who's coming to Alabama next month? Would you try to merge the two events together?
What's the date that Trump's coming? Do you recall? What's the date of that speech?
It's early May. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's two things here. May 1st, I think, is a speech for Trump. You cannot officially announce for the purposes of fundraising until May 26th. Although I did hear, Jeff, and you may know, the legislature is talking about trying to move the date back to May 13th to get away from having a primary the day after Memorial Day next year, which would mean they could start earlier. But listen, I don't know. But I think I think you nailed it. I think he's going to wind up having a special meeting with some people. And I think he's going to wind up. I would not be a bit surprised if he doesn't make a courtesy call to Ainsworth, because I don't think they're adverse to each other, but they are both vying for the same thing potentially. And then I think the news begins to trickle out that the inner circle is letting it be known that our man's in the market, and then he's going to officially announce on whatever first date he can, I would think next month, so that the fundraising kicks off.
Let me raise an important point here.
All right.
And I know the rules for governor are different than Senate. He still has a Senate PAC that he can raise money for. And then what he can do, he can back a bunch of members in the Senate with that, who will in turn turn around, come to Alabama, and do fundraisers for him. So he's got some options here that like an Ainsworth wouldn't have. I don't think Ainsworth's going to run for for governor against Tuberville. I think he might hesitate to run for Senate, but he'll probably end up in that Senate race.
Well, so yeah, and I would think so too. Having young kids, I certainly respect that. But Katie Britt has also shown you can have a family and still go back and forth to D.C. I really think that what you're going to want. But by the way, too, one of the interesting things, I didn't know this till recently. A federal PAC raised for a federal office can be used for a state office, but you can't take a state PAC and run it for federal. So he could bring that money with him too for his race too, is my understanding. Anyway.
Wasn't that what Marshall tried to do with the RAGA thing, and then they took it to court, but he prevailed?
I think you may be right. That does sound familiar.
But Archer Davis tried to do the same thing, but he ran for governor, and they didn't let him do it.
And they didn't let him go the opposite direction with it. Yeah, he couldn't. He couldn't turn around and run for Congress with the money he raised to run for a state office. But yeah, it does go. It goes trickle down, but it doesn't run up. So we'll see, man. But I really think that's what's going to be. And I think you're going to watch it. Looking around the nation, this is like you got Marsha Blackburn running. You've got Vivek Ramaswamy running. You've got. I mean, what people are seeing is the power of the executive branch. I think COVID and the Trump campaign have shown the world that the power of the executive branch is more than we thought. Even DeSantis proved that in Florida. And I think you're going to wind up seeing that there's going to be some pretty dynamic conservative Republican candidates for governor who are going to jump on in the races. And it's going to be more than
Marsha
just those
Blackburn
few.
said that.
Yeah.
She said that's one reason why she wants to run for governor if she decides to.
Because
one
person
believes
can
more
make a
power is
difference.
going back to the states.
Yeah. And they come out of being one of 100 to being one of one who can then try to have a greater opportunity to impact, where they are. I think it's going to be something to watch. It's going to be huge. And I'll be honest with you, I am so ready to have a governor. And the phrase that I keep using is I'm ready to have a God-fearing gunslinger come in there and actually speak to the events of the day and not just go, hi, Steppa, y'all, and then be gone again for another 3 weeks and we don't see her. I'm ready to have somebody in there who's going to be out front leading the charge. And we can rally around. So let's see it happen. Bring it. Bring it. Is that the music? Am I there? That was like one question that dominated the whole time. Yaffe, thanks for sitting in for Dale, man. We appreciate you. Jeff Poor,
No
thank
problem.
you. We'll talk soon. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. That's the Grand Council. We'll be right back. Hey, all you right side ruffians out there, you are listening to Right Side Radio, solid conservative, just plain right.
Turn it up.
And we are back. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. Goes from like Huntsville back over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back to Gadsden. I mean, all the way down to that loveliest little village on the plains we call Auburn. And yeah, straight across the border from there to what we now call, once again, Fort Benning. And then, oh, by the way, there's big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi thrown in just for good measure. Hey, by the way, I got to remind you guys, so we just did the Grand Council, right? The Grand Council, Jeff Poor, usually Dale Jackson. Today, Yaffe sat in. DeKalb MD is the sponsor weekly of the Grand Council. DeKalb MD, it's healthcare simplified is what they like to say. So yeah, DeKalb MD, that's DEKALB, DeKalb MD, is a direct primary care clinic with a network of clinics really located in Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, and they operate on a monthly membership basis. 2 of our locations are right there in Chattanooga, y'all. And I'm listen, DeKalb MD, when I say it operates on a monthly membership, it's like almost like joining a gym. $75 a month, you get what they call concierge medical care, individualized care with benefits. You get $75 paid to them. You get same day or next day scheduling, no wait time, longer visits with your provider, after hours access, no additional cost, direct phone numbers. Don't mess with your insurance, $75 a month. They'll even mail your medications to your house. Wow. Look, DeKalb MD, it works with you instead of your insurance. And yeah, DeKalb MD, it's primary care with you in mind. And they are the sponsors weekly of the Grand Council. And you can find out more about them at www.decabmd.com. That's decabmd.com. Schedule an appointment today and tell them, by the way, you heard about it on Right Side Radio. Let me go to the phones because I do believe that the illustrious Jeff Rowe from Indiana is on the phone. Hey, buddy, how are you?
I'm doing well. I just got through Nashville. Hammer down, man.
Hammer down. There you go. Boy, there's a
hammer down northbound.
There's a 70s CB. I mean, listen, let me ask you guys. You're in the trucking industry. Do you listen to the song Convoy at least once a week just get yourself fired up?
I think I've got that 45 at home somewhere. B.W. McCall.
That was an amazingly weird hit. But it also came on the heels, didn't it? I think of the Smokey and the Bandit, and everybody in God's green earth had a CB radio at that point.
Oh yeah, had a lot of good songs back then, like Wildwood Weed and Convoy and Mr. Jaws, all them fun little songs.
The Streak, remember when The Streak came out?
Oh yeah,
that's crazy times. It's amazing what you can do to get a hit in the United States. All right, man, what do you think about this stuff? We've talked about everything from politics on the Grand Council to the no free lunch about student loans to Alien Enemies Act. What do you think?
The Alien Enemies Act.
Yeah.
How do these federal judges sit there and tell the executive branch that they can't do something that's actually law? I mean, it just blows my mind that is there any penalty for that?
Well, so here's
when they're just doing it out of malice, I'd say.
I think they are agenda-driven judges, but here's what they're doing. They're not saying you can't do it. They're saying you can't do it without more due process, and they know what that means. When you've got millions you're trying to deport, hundreds of thousands under the Alien Enemies Act, they know that means it jimmies up the whole program, because if you have to have a separate hearing for each individual person, there's almost no way to make that happen. They literally wanted no due process for him to come in, but they want all kinds of due process for him to go out. It's unreal.
Yeah. Well, it's like you said the other day. They knew the thing coming in that they would be could be put out at any time, so they were warned of that, or should have been warned of that. So.
Well, I think what needs to happen right now,
process as far as I'm concerned.
I think the Supreme Court of the United States is going to have to weigh in and define what the due process requirements are. Because if they're going to say that now they have to have special hearings, then we have to look back and say, then why didn't we have to have special hearings in the other few times when it was used? And what is the actual black and white, statutes say? Does it require due process in a certain way? Because the Trump administration thinks they're meeting the law, and the left says they're not. So if the Supreme Court will just clarify if necessary, then we can move on. In fact, what will happen then is maybe we can take some of that USAID money, hire a whole bunch of folks to stand in as proxy judges and give them their opportunity to speak, and then head to Seacott Prison in El Salvador.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of like this other judge that is telling this guy from El Salvador that they got to do all these things, that forcing the executive branch to do things that they are the judicial shouldn't have any jurisdiction over, especially over someone who's from a different country and is in that country. So is no longer a citizen. They've never been a citizen.
No, the idea that members of Congress and the U.S. Senate are flying down to a foreign country to demand access to a non-citizen and then try to affect his imprisonment there is really just, it's unseemly, it's gross, but it's also just asinine. I mean, it makes no sense whatsoever.
I think this country we need to make some laws, because there is no, when the government deprives you of your constitutional rights, there's no punishment for that. And a good example of that would have been like during COVID, whenever you was going to church and meeting for a peaceful assembly, they denied you of that. But then if you was rioting in the streets, then you could assemble for that. So I mean, how would you ever hold somebody accountable for denying you your civil rights? That is already done. Is already gone.
Yeah, there's a definite disparity here. I mean, I look at this thing like the real ID, the star ID thing. So Charlene and I realized, okay, we're gonna have to get it, and so we decided to go ahead and check it out. I said, honey, go ahead and check online and tell us tell me what the requirements are and where do we get it locally? Because at one point they had a separate office for it. And she came back and said, you're not going to believe this. You have to sign up for an appointment, and the first available appointment's in June. So, I mean, you look at that and think, okay, so I've got to wait until June to get a license that allows me to fly around in my own country. Meanwhile, you got illegals that ran across the border, swam in, took tunnels, whatever it took. Even some of them got flown in by Biden, and they're getting, to just travel where they want to, no inhibitions. And oh, by the way, they can demand to stay. And I'm thinking it's like they have more rights than I do.
Yeah, Indiana's wasn't that bad. We just had to take a birth certificate, I think, and proof of citizenship and stuff and everything down to the license branch, and then they looked it over, and that was it. Here's your star.
Well, what's happening now is people like me who felt sure they were going to get rid of this before it came down to May 7th are finding out, dadgummit, apparently it's not going away, and now we got to do something about it. But
maybe you need to become an illegal alien, then you can fly anywhere you want to go, no license required.
Get some of that those free Biden bucks, All right, well, man.
And if you play your cards right, you may even get a trip to El Salvador.
Wow, all expenses paid. Yeah. All right, brother, be safe on the road. We'll talk to you tomorrow, and I'm glad you're already north of the Nashville.
I'm passing White House, Tennessee.
All right.
Have a good one, Phil.
We'll see you, man. Okay, wow. That's, it's amazing to think that we got to get a star ID and illegals get all kinds of due consideration. Several text messages. What do we got here? Roxanne from Harvest sent us something. What is that? Oh, happy birthday to the U.S. Army Reserves. I did not even realize that. Twice the citizen, combat ready. I like that. I've always loved that twice the citizen thing. Thank you very much, Roxanne. I appreciate you bringing that up. Happy birthday, U.S. Army Reserve. By the way, how many birthdays is that? What year are we talking about? This is formed in 1908. So we are at, 117 years. How about that? Jeremy from Moulton says the Supreme Court will have to take up the issue of due process again. In light of the drastic way things have changed over the years, I don't think anyone ever envisioned a time when our government would facilitate an invasion of our own homeland. This is obviously something vastly different from what the 14th Amendment covered. This is not about a group of people who were forced into this country. These people chose to be here, and our government had to ignore border laws to enable such a massive number of them to get here. This can't be allowed to stand. Jeremy. Okay, Jeremy, when are you going to co-host the show for us? Spot on, brother. So you are exactly right. That's the other piece of this is the birthright citizenship issue. I don't think anybody ever anticipated that you'd have in a span of just a few years have 9 million just drop in and start birthing babies. And these, they're all here illegally. They flaunted our laws, and then they get to claim citizenship. That doesn't make any sense either. So I agree with you, Jeremy. I don't think anybody anticipated that we'd have this massive of an influx. And that's why the Supreme Court has no choice but to weigh in. They have to. They have to clarify the law, not clarify the law as to current events per se, but recognize that current events require them to wade in and remind everybody what the law really is. Ron from Brownsboro is mad because the last Fox News drop says Chinese government officials demand mutual respect before tariff talks. Maybe he's not mad. What I'm saying, he's telling me. Typical communist talk. He says they demand respect while having no respect for you. They claim the moral high ground while denying any absolute morality. They claim they're strong while always being offended. I think China is actually in the worst position in this tariff war. I don't think their economy will let them have near the amount of sway and leverage that the United States has. We're their number one buying partner. And granted, we get a lot of stuff from them, but they get a lot of stuff from us. And something's going to have to give. But right now, it's definitely a trade war. How far it goes, it depends on whether Xi wants to try and save face or whether he's willing to negotiate because he recognizes he needs to salvage his economy in order to keep his power. Mike from Huntsville says, Hussein O'Biden is the criminal cabal. The entire media brainwashing is the really stupid people that have no abilities to see or, in fact, brainwash victims of the MK Ultra mass media compliance with the color revolution. Wow. Good Lord, Mike, come back to the light, brother. I mean, it's going to be all right. But he says what they have left is the objective of projecting what they do to us citizens, but accusing others of their crimes. Whew. I had to wade through the madness. But I get you, Mike. I understand the sympathies there. Paul from Huntsville says, Phil, what would be the due process to deport a member of the Taliban or Hezbollah or Houthi rebels? Great question. None. I don't think there would be any question. I think they would be in Gitmo yesterday. So that's the point. That's why they're named. That's why Trump first declared them to be alien enemies. And now they're just mad that there are. And then I remind you guys, we have an FBI report that just came out today that says that there are clear evidences, according to the FBI, that members of the Maduro government in Venezuela helped get Tren de Aragua into our country because they wanted to destabilize America. Just saying. Enemies, yes. Rock from Huntsville says, I like that, Rock. Rock from Huntsville says there should be no due process awarded to illegal alien invaders who were not vetted or had any due process to enter. If they enter illegally without due process to legal citizenship, they forfeit all due process when caught and should be immediately deported. Fair. Dana from Athens says Fox on WVNN has been sugarcoating the story. Okay, I can't control that. I don't have any sway whatever about what Fox is saying. All right, we're taking the last break of the day here on a hump day. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Making common sense like a superpower. All right, we're down to the end of the day. And all you guys getting ready for go-home time right now, just know this. Tomorrow is a brand spanking new day, and you are more than halfway at this point to the end of the week. Hey, by the way, we got big news for the listening area. FBI Director Kash Patel was in Huntsville, Alabama today. So Redstone Arsenal, and by the way, I've got great ties to Redstone Arsenal, me personally. Did a lot of my growing up out there. Dad was Army, Granddad was Army. Granddad was actually post commander at Redstone, General McBride, when I was a kid, and spent a lot of time running around Redstone Arsenal. Like a lot of y'all, I remember back in the day, and you can still feel it, but especially back in the day when they tested rockets all the time, and you could feel the ground shake. But Redstone Arsenal has gone from being sort of a backwater, small, sleepy post in the late 50s, early 60s to becoming much the center of some of the main pieces of governmental universe. And I say that because, of course, Army Material Command is out there. It is a massive installation just for the military, and there's a defense industry out there that is bar none. The Marshall Space Flight Center, of course, is sort of synced with things related out there, Missile Command, all the things that have been there over the years, and now the FBI. So FBI has, and by the way, they're calling it like Headquarters South. So it's going to be, it's next to DC. It's the major installation for the FBI.
Yeah, I mean, what did he commit to? Like 500 FBI?
Yeah, so I'm looking at an article right now. So Kash Patel said that 500 more FBI employees will soon move to Huntsville, and more on the way after that. I think we're looking at upwards of 1,000 FBI employees permanently stationed at Redstone.
So that, coupled with, hopefully, fingers crossed, a Space Command announcement soon. It seems like a lot of people coming to Huntsville, which is a good thing. But I mean, Huntsville's also been seeing a lot of people coming to Huntsville the last couple of years, you know?
Yeah. So we're right now sitting here at the Rightside Studios. We're in the Gadsden area, and it's been good, and it's beautiful here. Rivertown, lots of neat things, but the economy here is. There is no other economy in the Southeast like Huntsville. Mm-mm. And I say Huntsville, I'm talking about the metro area. You're really looking at all the surrounding communities, Madison, going out towards Harvest, over towards Decatur, Athens. All of them have been benefiting from Huntsville's massive growth.
Yeah, I mean, you go to Huntsville, it seems like Huntsville is becoming all the way, stretching out to Athens, like you said. Like the amount of apartments, and it's growing like crazy. Anyway, you're great. By the way, Kash Patel did say this. Tommy Tuberville and Katie Britt, both our U.S. senators, were there with him at a press conference. He toured the Bureau's facilities. It's the first time he's had a chance to go down to Redstone. And he said Redstone Arsenal is one of the gems in the FBI's crown jewels. It truly is, Patel said. One of the things we've been working on together is tackling violent crime across the country. But in order to do that, he said, you need a place for people like experts to train, and that's right here in Redstone. You need a place for people to live in a community, and that's right here in the state of Alabama. We've been getting some great notoriety lately, and I'm loving that. Yep.
All the more reason to have a governor who is going to lead the charge with a legislature that will hopefully, rally alongside and make great things happen for the state. Listen, I love this listening area. I love our Tennessee folks, our Georgia folks, our Mississippi folks, and of course our Alabama folks, which is where it all started and where I live right now. But I am so ready to see the southeast of the United States, to include Huntsville, to include Alabama in general, really come into its own. I think it's amazing. People are shocked when they come here and they find, wait a minute, I've lived in D.C. how long? And down here I could have bought 3 times the house, and my kids could have gone to a better school, and I could have done what with my quality of life? And the streets are safe, and on and on and on. Quality of life down here is a whole lot different. So I say, FBI, welcome on down, y'all. Welcome on down.
I would agree with that.
More to come. By the way, they already have some key training out there before that. The EOD, Explosive Ordnance Disposal, has a lot of its training out there at Redstone, too. Cool stuff.
By the way, John just got the grades in.
Oh, yeah? What do you say?
That real quick.
You tell me.
Jeff Poor and Jeff from Indiana both get an A+ for their equally awesome performances. JP and Phil both get an A+ for their equally fantastic performances, which means today's winner with the perfect A+. It's obviously none other than the Yaffee, the voice of reason, because I didn't have to listen to Dale Jackson's terrible voice today.
He also wants us to replace Dale permanently.
He does, yes.
Oh my gosh! All right, now he's an OG. He's an OG member of the council. He's got a permanent standing. All right, listen. There's more of us than there are of them. I'm telling you, God is still very much on his throne. Y'all stay in the fight. We'll see you tomorrow.